Welcome to WLNM, the web novel and manga review, hosted by Zeke Changuris.
Welcome to WLNM, the web light novel and manga review. We are dedicated to bringing our listeners the very special artists and writers that are part of this amazing explosion of creativity, giving us stories to entertain and inspire us. We'd like to welcome today Estoth, the author of the 8-volume original English light novel series, Isekai Monster, a story about that takes place in a typical fantasy world overrun with heroes and demons, and a not-so-typical princess and her not-so-typical hero. So, welcome to the show. So tell me a little bit about this story of yours.
Well, after reading a lot of Japanese light novels, mostly transported to another world, I was simply compelled to write my own and do it differently. But you can't do it completely differently or else it's not the same genre. So it's very hard deciding what I wanted to change and what not to.
So you're saying that it's, and I think what you're talking about is what some people criticize about the isekai genre when they're always like, oh, well, it's been done. It's a genre. There are certain tropes, there are certain things that happen in these stories that make them part of a genre. And the interesting part to me has always been how has the author made things different? What is the different way that you've approached this?
Well, one of the biggest things that I believe I've done is not following the protagonist's entire thought process, like focusing a one-person perspective, first-person perspective. And I mean, there are other stories that go around and give you some characters' perspectives sometimes, but I felt that following a lot of different characters fleshed out the world better, especially since a number of characters don't really act they are not actually the way that they act, which is another thing that the protagonist is. They're essentially they're essentially wearing a mask, I should say.
Okay. All right. I get it. I mean, it's that idea that it is a great theme to me. I like that theme of people wearing masks, and that, who are we when it's all said and done? Uh, are we honest with ourselves? Are we honest about ourselves? Is that who everybody else sees us? Because I know the kids that I teach in high school, even though I try and be authentic, I am not necessarily the same person when I am Mr. Changuris, the teacher, that I am when I'm at home. So it's, yeah, I like that idea.
Exactly. Like certain people have completely different views of you, and it's not always just because how you act, but it's how they perceive you.
Exactly.
And people can control that to a degree.
It takes a lot of skill sometimes. I know many of us have, through high school, probably that's where we got started at putting up that illusion of who we are or who we want people to see us to be.
Exactly.
So you
After
seem to
dealing
have,
with people for years.
yeah, you seem to
Yeah.
have you hit a groove when you started this. You created 8 books in this series. Was it something that you expected that you were going to go on this long, or was it something that you were planning on, I'm going to write till it's done?
I had it planned to just write till I was done. When I started writing, I had a relatively long narrative. I believed it would be around 10 novels, But when I started writing over a year ago, essentially an outline, or that might not be right, a prototype, I would guess, of it, like it ended up getting to around 12 novels, and that was, I didn't even end up finishing that before I decided to go back and start rewriting to publish.
Okay.
And then, yeah, it exploded again from there.
There are many of us who would feel blessed if we were uh, given the inspiration to explode over the page like that. It's it truly is a talent when you've got that much of a story to tell us. Um, so, what got you started in writing? Were you an early writer, or was this something that you came into later?
I mean, I wrote in school like everyone else. I wouldn't exactly say I was great at it or truly enjoyed it. I believe I did it better than most. Uh, I think simply being able to finish a lot of assignments just made it feel not as difficult to me.
Okay. Where did you cut your teeth on fiction? I mean, what were your early stories like?
uh,
Fanfic
the,
is okay. This is a safe place. If you are a fanfic writer, don't worry.
no, I've read a lot of those. I've never actually been compelled to write one. I've thought of a lot, done a little musings in my mind, talking with family about theoretical timelines or whatnot for various anime stories and whatnot. Um, the earliest writing was probably back in high school, and it was just I believe it was an isekai as well. It was a similar thing to Digimon, a bunch of kids transported, and then they get partners essentially. So it was a riff off Digimon, a little short story from that, around that time when Digimon first came out. But that was probably one of the first short stories I ever wrote.
And uh, looking back, is it what you would consider the cringy-worthiness of your youth, or you're like, yeah, I might come back to this story one day?
Yeah, it was definitely cringeworthy. It was a little too much of a ripoff, I would say.
Okay.
Yeah, there was not a lot of deviation. Like looking back on it, I might have just been rushing to finish an assignment with something that what I had, something that I really liked at the time.
Okay.
Yeah.
Uh, so what inspires you to write? Are you one of those people that need inspiration to start creating, or are those stories just like swimming around in the soup of your brain and they just want to pour out?
I would have to say both.
Okay.
There are times where I am compelled to write, usually when I'm ruminating on certain things, and yeah, things just start boiling over in my mind and I have to write it out. And it doesn't always come out perfect or even necessarily good, but at the very least, it sometimes helps as a jumping off point. And then the other times, it's just I'm reading so much that uh, it's just sort of falls into place. I wouldn't exactly call it inspiration, just like, oh, 1 + 1 = 2.
Right.
Just
And Do you
something
also
that makes sense.
do you also find that that inspiration comes to you at the most inopportune times? I usually get inspired when I've got my hands full with 10 other things.
Usually, I'd have to say it's about 50-50.
Okay.
There are times where I'll just pull out the laptop and start typing away, and other times it's just like, no, I can't do anything right now. I hope I remember.
Yeah, my first novel was written during break time at work. My first career was in journalism, and in journalism, the way things work is it's hurry up and wait. And so I'd hurry to whatever the assignment was, press conference or whatever, and end up waiting for the thing to start. And so I would write while I was waiting for whatever event that I was covering to happen. So yeah, I did a lot of writing during my paid hours at work, but I wasn't going to do anything else.
Yeah, I worked as a childcare worker, and it was a group home. So in the night, kids are sleeping, so I'd start writing then. Or now babysitting, and again, kids sleeping, and I start writing.
Yeah. Yeah, my sister actually worked in a similar setting at she worked as a on-site part-time live-in for the West Virginia School of the Deaf and Blind. So yeah, it was one of those where when the kids went to bed, she had some time and she would do her homework for her master's classes. The
Yeah.
eh, what about this universe? This universe you created, do you think sets it apart from other universes?
Uh,
What's the thing
I mean,
that that if I
there's
yeah, go ahead.
yeah, there's a lot of stuff that I believe is going to change people's perspective with book 9.
Okay.
But other than that, there's one of the things that I really wanted to emphasize is that it is a different world. It's not just, oh, back in time or anything. It is a completely different world. People have different views on norms and morals and just everything.
Which is something I've always found interesting, and I know as part of the anime and light novel community that it's always it seems anachronistic when you see Japanese customs in another world, which in itself probably could be an entire light novel series because you have them they're in another world, but everyone's still bowing and using honorifics.
Exactly. Little things like that. I mean, there's a number of those things incorporated into my world, but the world itself, it is affected and it grew because of their heroes that were summoned
Okay.
for
You give
just
a
centuries.
rationale.
Yeah, and it's also not exactly like it doesn't follow any exact point in time, but there are definite things that you will notice that obviously came from our world. And it's because of that, because the heroes bring their own culture when they are brought over, and all the heroes, they're like demigods to those people.
Well, I mean, that's pretty good for a pretty good reason to want to be a Sekid, because almost always it works out pretty good.
Almost always, that is apt.
There are times when it doesn't, but then it turns itself around and it ends up pretty good. I'm thinking of in Ari Frueta, he does go through hell, but he ends up with one hell of a harem. So
Yeah, then you have Shield Hero as well.
yes, yep.
And you can only assume it's probably going to end up well for Subaru in ReZero.
We can hope, but I think his point in life is to suffer. I mean,
Yeah.
all he does is suffer. He's like out of all the Isekai people, he's the one I'd least want to be. I think
Exactly.
I'd rather be Kazuma.
Oh, of course. Kazuma has it easy. He's just Kazuma.
Yeah, I think I'd rather be Kazuma than in Subaru's hands. Yeah,
Hmm.
yeah.
Definitely.
So let's see. How is your writing process? Is it one of mapping everything out, or are you more of a discovery writer where you just let the characters lead you?
Again, I would have to say both because I had a an outline in my mind, and then as I was writing that, things started changing, and yeah, after a certain point, stuff started changing so much, and then looking back, it was obvious that it was set up for this from the very beginning, and I did not plan some of this stuff, and it freaked me out.
But don't you love that? That's one of my favorite things in the
Oh
writing
yes, no, I loved
process.
it. I loved it. It was just kind of scary not realizing that like my subconscious or whatever had done this. It's just like what kind of eldritch being is talking to me or whatnot.
Yeah, I had an emotional breakdown when that happened in my first novel. Uh, I just I came to a realization that this is why something happened. And then I was apologizing out loud to a character as I was putting it down on the page. So yeah, it's one of my favorite experiences when it comes to being when it comes to writing is when a story takes you a place you never figured it would take you. It's you think that you're the god of that world, but I guess even God can be surprised sometimes.
Yeah, it's like, yes, you're the god of this world, but like one of many.
Yes. Do you do a lot of drafts? Or are you a hardcore edit as you go kind of person?
Uh, I guess it's edit as I go. I wrote essentially the entire story and then I went back and started editing it. And that's when it starts ballooning.
Okay.
Yeah. And it's mostly because, like, by the time I got to the end, I had realized all the changes that I didn't realize. So I didn't want them to be, what is it? I didn't want them to be too twisty. So I tried to foreshadow better.
Okay.
Hopefully that comes across with book 9.
That way you don't get the uh, plot device convenience by it if you accused of
Exactly.
plot armor because you just if you didn't set any of that up earlier in the story for it to come back.
Yeah, no,
Yeah, you
no
sometimes people
unexplained
get a little
twists.
hostile to those sudden twists. Cue organ music.
Exactly.
Um, so let's see. What's your favorite kind of scene to write? What do you really like writing? Are you a dialogue guy, an action guy? What kind of scene?
What kind of scene? Uh, I'd probably actually be a dialogue. I'm not
Okay.
that good on fight scenes. At least I don't feel I am. I visualize them a lot better than I can put them to words.
Yeah, that I find I struggle with that too. Um, so I, I I think, it'd be nice if there was someone out there who could really help all of us with that. How do you do how you choreograph a fight scene on the page? Uh, yeah,
Yeah,
it's just it's a hard thing. It's easy to visualize, but no, I mean, if you think about it, it could take you 5 minutes to read a fight scene in some of these books, and in the end, it's really just if you actually acted it out, it probably would only take like 10 seconds.
yeah, you're visualizing it going all forever, the fight scenes in anime, and then it's realistically, it's only a couple paragraphs
Yeah,
because everybody's moving so fast and you can't even see some of the stuff that's going on.
yeah. So, what authors do you admire? Is there some sort of touchstone for you for when it comes to writing? When you're like, you know what, I want to write like this guy or this gal.
Oh, writing like someone?
Well, I grew up as a big fan of Lucy Maud Montgomery and F. Scott Fitzgerald, and I and by reading a lot of stories like theirs, it really ended up influencing how I approached writing. So, is there something like that in your case?
A single author that I would have to say would be Christopher Pike. I read a lot of his books when I was younger. And as an author, I would probably say I try to write like him.
Okay.
Yes, I believe I'm usually inspired by a lot of the light novel authors, but um, I very specifically try to not write like them. Just it's just something I didn't want to do with this book specifically, this entire series.
Okay. So, what so as we keep moving on, now that you mentioned light novel series, uh, what do you think? What is the a series that you've really enjoyed? I mean, I
Really
personally
enjoyed.
have been reading A Realist Hero nonstop for the last month. I'm plowing through the books uh, at a ridiculous pace.
Oh, well, I've read a lot of light novels. Ones that I really enjoy from the more recently would definitely be A Sentence of a Bookworm.
Yeah.
Mine is just adorable,
Yes, she is.
and I love her little antics.
Yeah.
And it's a much more enjoyable read than a lot of other things.
Yes, I can see that. Hell, though I did get really excited today because my paper copy of uh, I told you to make my abilities average in the next life. I just
Oh,
got my
yes.
my
Mile,
paperback copy
yes.
of the brand new the the latest paperback version to come out. So I was like, oh yes. I was actually reading like 3 or 4 pages before I set everything up in here
Oh,
because
yeah, that one's good. I
oh,
read the
Mile
the
is
web, the
hysterical.
digital. Yes, Mile is definitely one of the other ones I read. It's a really good just sit down and chill read,
Yes,
because it's one of those worlds that you know, or you're relatively sure nothing's ever really gonna go bad for them.
yes.
So you're never worried, I guess, which
Yeah.
is different from mine. Like there are times where you get not scared but worried.
Well,
So
mine's world kind of pisses me off, but there are a lot of worlds where there's that social stratification that really, really rubs me the wrong way.
yes,
Like
that's the thing
burn
that's
the
in a
world
lot of
down
stuff.
and start again.
Yeah, if only it was that easy. I mean, I'm sure there are a couple isekais that exactly happens.
Yeah.
I
Well,
mean, actually, one of my characters, I've been really wanting to do an origin for one of the side characters, where he
okay.
essentially does that. His whole story is that he was summoned, and he completely tears down the government and everything and rebuilds their entire social structure and governments exactly how he believes it should work and would work best for everybody. And
I,
as far as he knows, that's right.
yeah. Yeah. It something similar happens in Realist Hero because he's a Sekid to this world, uh, and he has like a degree in um, it's like social policy or something like that. And so
Yes, and his favorite author, or no, not favorite. One of the authors that he was
Machiavelli.
talking about was Machiavelli. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. I really like that too. Reading Realist Hero. It's definitely one of the ones I keep up with.
I think he has one of the best harems.
Best
I
harem.
I
I don't know about that.
I like the girls in his harem. They all seem, despite some of them being elves and etc., I, I think they all feel very down to earth to me.
Yes, that's a very good thing for him and all those characters. The only thing why I wouldn't say they would be the best is because I don't really believe any of them are, from an otaku's perspective, waifu material.
Okay.
Because like they're all his, and it's like, nah, you don't want to really ruin that. And even going past that, it's just, oh no, these just don't work out for me. They don't play well for the fan base, essentially.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying. Yes, but yeah, I really when I'm like, every one of those girls to me seems marriageable in one way or another, and heck, the way things are shaping up, he's not the only one marrying more than one person. So it, it's kind of interesting the way that you can see the other relationships forming up in these polygamous in this polygamous world, and it's in many ways it's done for very practical reasons.
Exactly. Like back when our history, when that was much more prevalent, it was usually done for practical reasons.
Yep. Though I recently watched something where someone said the way to correct Japan's declining birth rate was polygamy. I don't think that's going to get through, but that I thought that was a very interesting take on declining birth rates from this quote unquote expert.
Yeah, no, I've read a lot of those kind of articles too. The only ones that really make sense is them reforming the way that they do their focusing on work, I guess.
Yes,
That's
all
really the
work,
only way that they're going to probably fix the
all work and
declining
no
birth
play
rate.
leads to a declining birth rate.
Exactly.
That's something we got right here in America. Let's see. So, um, let's see. So you're on Twitter, right? And
Yes.
I'm going to make sure I mention at Estoth on, I'll put that right up on the screen. And I'll wrap this up by definitely thanking you for taking time. I know this was kind of out of the blue and really quickly, but I had been following you on Twitter and took a look at some of the things that you've done and thought you'd be a perfect candidate to come talk with us. And I know you probably feel the same way, that the, the barriers to entry to get your stories out there have been never been so low, and that everyone who has a story deserves that opportunity to get it out there to be heard. So, if the people listening, if you like what you've heard today, please hit the subscribe button. WLNM. We hope to continue to highlight the best that the independent creators have to offer. And if you are an independent creator and would like to talk with me, look me up on Twitter at Zeke Changuris. I'll place that back down at the screen too. So until next time, keep reading.
This has been a WLNM podcast.